Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon. So today we are going to continue to chapter 4, perception and learning. Now let's take a look the learning outcomes for this particular chapter. Okay, at the end of this chapter, students should be able to define perception and explain the importance of perception, explain the factors that influence perception, identify the shortcuts used in making judgment about others, explain Kelly's attribution theory and the three determinants of attribution, explain the link between perception and decision making, define learning and its importance to organisation. Okay, now how to understand the process of perception, how we are making the perception at the first place. Okay, so let's take a look the definition of perception. Perception is a process which involves classifying, interpreting and giving meaning to what is happening around us as well as what we see. Okay, if you can see the figure 4.1, okay, the perceptual process. Okay, first we develop an information, okay, that consists of inputs and stimuli, and we suddenly develop a perceptual process which include attention, organization, interpretation and retrieval. Finally, we will give feedback towards our perceptual process, which is response, while by giving meaning to the target or situation. What are the factors influencing perception? Perceiver, target or object, situations. So perceiver will develop a certain attitudes, motives, interests, experience and expectation. Okay, and then target or objects will include novelty, motive, sounds, proximity, size and background. And the situation, the third factors influencing perception is situation, which include time, work, environment and social environment. Now let's take a look one by one. A perceiver is the individual who form the perception in question. Each individual is unique in terms of the characteristics. This leads to different interpretation and meanings when different individuals see and encounter the same thing. Target or object are other characteristics that affect perception, including motion, sound, background, proximity, as well as the similarity of the targets. While the situation would be the context in which we see the target, object or experience the event. Okay, perceptual distortion. Perceptual distortion is a process where people would use shortcuts to give meanings to targets or objects. The common shortcuts are selective perception, halo effect, projection, stereotypes and contrast effect. So these are perceptual distortion. Okay, in this situation, okay, while giving the meaning to the situation, people tend to create a certain perceptual distortion or distorting perception. Okay, the shortcuts are as mentioned before. First, selective perception. Selective perception, most of the time we tend to notice only a few characteristics or things around us. For example, should we be in the aisle of supermarket, we only tend to notice the brand of an item which we are familiar with. So we usually tend to focus on a certain aspect while ignoring others, and it is called as perceptual distortion. Okay, next is halo effect. Halo effect is the tendency to draw a general impression based on a single characteristic. This is because the one characteristic overshadows the other characteristic. For example, during an interview session for the position of customer service assistant in Hotel XYZ, the HR executive from the Human Resources Department failed to select the most promising candidate from the many candidates who attended the interview session, as he was attracted to the sweet smile of one of the female candidates. So it is called halo effect. We tend to focus on a single characteristic of a person or a target objects. Okay, similar to me, effects or projections is the tendency for people to perceive others who are similar to themselves favorably as compared to individuals who are less similar. So this will apply to similarities in work values as well as demographic, variable, age, gender and race. For example, if you are an alumni of College Universiti Islam Perlis, you tend to focus on the people who have a similar characteristic as you are. Next is first impression errors is the tendency for people to judge others based on their initial judgment of the individuals in question. This error is also known as primary effect error. This is the other name of first impression error, primary effect error. So this error should be avoided by supervisors and managers who make decision on the delegation of workload and responsibilities as well as work performance appraisal. Next is stereotypes. Stereotypes are assumptions that all members of a specific group behave in a similar way as they have the same characteristic. For example, we tend to stereotype that female driver are reckless. Next is contrast effect. Contrast effect is a scenario where we tend to evaluate and compare one situation or event to another similar situation or event that has happened before. The situation or event being used for comparison should be either better or worse compared to the situation or event being evaluated. For instance, students in Arab language faculty are required to communicate with their peers in Arabic. As part of the requirement for their core subjects, the student formed two groups to present a role play in class. On the presentation day, the group members of Group 2 were given a low assessment as they were not able to communicate fluently in Arabic. Furthermore, everyone in Group 1 spoke fluent Arabic, which was a disadvantage for the members of Group 2. If Group 1 had comprised students who were less well-versed in speaking Arabic, the student in Group 2 would have received a more favorable grade for the role play task. Okay, so that's what we call a contrast effect. How to manage a perceptual distortion? There are several ways. Okay, how we can manage the perceptual distortion, such as have a high level of awareness, seek information from various sources, be empathetic, help to rectify incorrect perceptions, avoid common perceptual distortions. Now let's take a look at the Kelly's attribution theory. Kelly's attribution theory explains why people tend to make judgments and assign reasons to other people's behavior. People tend to observe other people and later tend to give reason and assume the cause of the behavior. They do so to determine whether the behavior is internally caused or externally caused. There are three factors. Which determine whether it is internally or externally caused. The factors are distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency. Okay, now let's take a look one by one. The first one will be distinctiveness. An individual who reacts in the same manner in other situations. If a person behaves the same way in other situations, then the distinctiveness is low. However, if a person behaves differently in other situations, then the distinctiveness is high. Okay. Next is consensus. Okay, consensus. An individual will give similar reaction as other people to the same situation. That's what we call a consensus. Next is consistency. An individual who we are judging gives similar reaction to different situation. If the person gives similar reaction at other times, then the consistency is high. However, if the person does not, then the consistency is low. So based on these three factors, Okay, if Ahmad is someone who is always late in all situation, then the consistency is high. However, if he is only late in submitting his monthly report this one particular time, then the consistency is low. If all of Ahmad's colleagues are the type of employees who are constantly late in submitting report, then the consensus is high. However, if the colleagues submit their reports on time, then the consensus is low. Assuming that Ahmad is habitually late in all situations, then the consistency is high. In this situation, we could say that Ahmad's behavior is a result of his internal causes. This is a very interesting theory that we call self-fulfilling prophecy, the Pygmalion effect. Okay, the Pygmalion effect and Golem effect. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a tendency for someone's expectation to cause that person to behave in a manner consistent with the expectation. In other words, a self-fulfilling tendency is a statement which will alters a person's action, thus making the statement come true. Okay, for example, Azahra is a surgeon and every morning at the start of her day, she tells herself that today is going to be a good day. This simple statement alters her actions and she will indeed act positively towards her work, her colleagues and all of her passions. She will go through the day challenged with a happy and satisfied feeling. This is what we call a Pygmalion effect. On the other side, okay, so if Azahra start the day off with a negative feeling, so what will happen is the negative feeling is called the Golem effect. Okay, next is learning. Learning is a behavior which happen all the time. Okay, which happen all the time. It is relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of experience. There are three theories which explain a learning process: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and social conditioning. So for further understanding, please take a look what is classical conditioning, what is operant conditioning, and what is social learning. Okay, I will explain briefly about operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is a learning process which occurs through rewards and punishment for behavior. Okay, for example, Mr. Lee, a marketing manager at a property developer, encouraged the sales team to work during the Chinese New Year celebration. This was to allow visitors who were back in their hometowns to view houses that were for sale. The employees were reluctant as they wished to spend quality time with their family during the festive season. Mr. Lee then promised that sales employees who worked through the festive season would be given an extra bonus payment. However, when the bonus payment was made months later, the employees realized that the bonus payment made to all employees was the same regardless of whether they worked during the festive season or not. Therefore, during the next festive season, which was Hari Raya Aidilfitri, when Mr. Lee once again made a request to his sales team to work during the festive season, the employees refused and gave many reasons for not working during that period. The decline can be explained by what operant conditioning is. Okay, it is a learning process which occurs through rewards and punishment for behavior. Okay, people learn through the punishments and behavior. Next is social learning. Social learning is a process where we learn through observation and direct experience. So the social learning theory proposed that the modeling process involves several steps such as attention process, retention process, reproduction process, and reinforcement process. The first one, attention process. In order to learn something, people pay attention to the features of the model behavior. We tend to be influenced by models that are attractive, important to us, or similar to us in our estimation. Next is retention process. Okay, Retention process refers to the influence of the model of us even though the model is no longer available. The third one would be reproduction process. The behavior which a person learns needs to be demonstrated and reproduced as evidence that he or she has learned. Reinforcement process, people would be more motivated to learn and follow the behavior should the behavior be linked to positive incentive. For example, like Mr. Lee cases with his employees during the festive season. If the Mr. Lee truly offered a bonus during the festive season for those who work during the festive season, then the people will agree to work during the festive season to fill in all the order from the customers. Okay, next is impact to organization. How the perception and learning process impact to organization. Managers must understand and must be able to manage perception process. Decision making based on perception would result in bias and unfair decision, and this would lead to dissatisfaction among employees. Failure to avoid dissatisfaction would lead to less productivity, which would later hinder the profitability of the organisation. So in this case, if we as a manager had promised our employees, okay, on a certain terms and condition, we must agree to give whatever we had told earlier. Okay, so that's all for our topics for chapter 4. Okay, I really hope that you can read for further understanding. If you have any question, you are free to contact me at any time. Please save these class recordings for future reference. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.